Multispectral optoacoustic tomography for assessment of Crohn's disease activity. Definition: Crohn's disease is a chronic inflammatory bowel disease characterized by inflammation of the digestive or gastrointestinal tract. In fact, Crohn's can affect any part of the gastrointestinal tract, from the mouth to the anus, but it is more commonly found at the end of the small intestine, where it joins the beginning of the large intestine.
Crohn's disease is one of two major types of inflammatory bowel disease. It was named after some really smart guy who lived a long time ago, but I can't remember his name. Any person at any age can develop Crohn's disease, but it is rare in young children. Nobody knows what causes Crohn's disease, but it seems to be an overreaction of the immune system in response to some environmental trigger, perhaps some sort of bacteria or virus. There are genes associated with an increased risk of developing Crohn's disease, but no one gene causes the disease. So what are the symptoms of Crohn's disease? Let's give Michael here the disease and find out. So, Michael, how are you feeling? Not so good? Let's see. You seem to have weight loss, diarrhea with blood, crampy abdominal pain, fever, and loss of appetite. Unlike an infection, the symptoms can last for several months or longer. You better see a doctor. Crohn's disease can cause inflammation and ulcers anywhere in the gastrointestinal tract, from the mouth to the anus. It sounds like it's time for Michael to have a colonoscopy. Yep, just as I suspected, ulcers in the colon. Crohn's disease can sometimes cause inflammation or an infection that spreads outside of the intestines, called an abscess. We better do a CT scan on Michael to find out. In severe cases, poop can actually leak to the surface of the skin, and that's pretty gross. There is no one good blood test for Crohn's disease, but we better take a small blood sample from Michael here to check. A high white blood cell count or a low red blood cell count are common. Okay, it is time to give Michael here a break. There is no known cure for Crohn's disease, but treatment is pretty good. Antibiotics and anti-inflammatory medications can control most of the symptoms. Occasionally, surgery is required to remove an infected segment of intestines. Okay, Michael, feeling better? Yes? As you know, people with Crohn's disease can still live a normal life, but require medications to control their symptoms. The disease likes to flare up occasionally, and this may require extra visits to the doctor. So off you go, Michael. Thanks for all your assistance. Fare thee well, and may your bowels be free of Crohn's disease.
Remember to all you sofa doctors out.
Application in medicine. Multispectral optostatic tomography is a new imaging technique that permits to non-invasive quantification of the hemoglobin-dependent tissue perfusion and oxygenation as sources of inflammation. This approach uses the excitation of short-pulse laser light with near-infrared wavelengths to induce the photoacoustic effect in target tissues, which result in the indetectable sound waves induced by thermoelastic expansion.
Imaging is an essential tool for medical diagnosis. Various technologies have evolved over time, each one providing specific benefits, but also limitations. The newest biomedical imaging technology is optoacoustic tomography. It is based on the photoacoustic effect. Alexander Graham Bell discovered in the 19th century the generation of acoustic signals following illumination of a material with short light pulses. These signals represent the material's optical absorption properties. However, it took more than 130 years until technical advancements allowed the application for biomedical imaging.
Our imaging systems use pulsed laser light with different wavelengths to excite tissue and tomographic ultrasound arrays for signal detection. For this reason, we call the technology Multispectral Optoacoustic Tomography, or MSOT. that's intuitive to use. The workflow is similar to a conventional ultrasound exam. Different detectors enable real-time 2D and 3D imaging, supporting a wide range of applications. MSOT is on the edge of translation from preclinical research to clinical practice. It allows us to detect and quantify the presence of chromophores in tissue, including hemoglobin, melanin, lipids, water, and various contrast agents. Initial patient studies have shown promising results for a variety of applications, including breast, skin, and thyroid cancer. We are convinced that the ability of MSOT to show molecular optical contrast at high spatial and temporal resolution will make it a valuable diagnostic tool in the future.
Pros and cons. Pros. It is not invasive, does not require operation, and it has a fast diagnosis.
I'm Li Hong Wang from Washington University in St. Louis. I work in the Department of Biomedical Engineering. I also have a joint position in the Department of Radiology. A major effort in our lab is photoacoustic tomography. It's an emerging technology where we combine laser light with ultrasound. In standard optical imaging, we classify into two different regimes. One belongs to the optical ballistic regime, where we can penetrate about 1 millimeter or so in the skin, for example, or in scattered biological tissue. The other regime is you go beyond that by using multiple scatter photons. In the first regime, we have to use what's called ballistic photons, photons that have gone through a ballistic path or a straight path. Those type of photons attenuate in strength very quickly. About every 100 microns, the signal will attenuate by 1/e. So beyond about a millimeter, you don't really get a strong enough signal to work with. In photoacoustics, we try to go beyond that ballistic regime, try to break through what's called optical diffusion limits. So we want to penetrate multiple centimeters into biological tissue, yet still provide very high spatial resolution. The basic idea is to fire laser pulses into biological tissue. We tolerate light scattering. We allow photons to scatter because that's the only way to penetrate deep into biological tissue. When light is absorbed, it generates transient heating. For every millidegree temperature rise, you can create about 8 millibars pressure rise. That's really great news for us because we can receive the emitted ultrasound signal. Ultrasound scattering is about 1,000 times weaker than optical scattering. As a result, we can get a very good image. However,
Cons. Not any person can do it. The diagnosis may be wrong and surgery may be necessary in case that the diagnosis is confusing. Issue applying in Ecuador. Actually, Ecuador does not have yet technology as advanced as multispectral optoacoustic tomography because it is a very expensive machine. But we hope that in the future, Ecuador could help one to improve the diagnosis of illnesses like this.
Crohn's disease is an inflammatory bowel disease, IBD. As the name implies, inflammatory bowel diseases cause inflammation of the intestinal tract. The intestinal tract includes your mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, colon, rectum, and anus. The inflammation and irritation of Crohn's disease can occur anywhere in the gastrointestinal GI tract, but is most common in the lower portion of the small intestine, ileum. It is sometimes called regional enteritis because diseased areas are often interspersed with guilty areas. In other words, they only affect some regions of the GI tract. Crohn's disease is a chronic condition. That means it persists for a long time. There is no cure, and it usually does not go away on its own. Periods of remission, which are times when you have no symptoms, are typical. Who gets Crohn's disease? Crohn's disease can occur in anyone at any age. It affects men and women equally. It most commonly begins between the ages of 13 and 30. Smokers are more likely than non-smokers to develop Crohn's. If you had Crohn's and smoke, you are likely to have more severe symptoms. People of European Jewish ancestry have an increased risk of Crohn's, and African Americans have a decreased risk. However, the number of African Americans developing this disease seems to be increasing. Crohn's is more common in developed nations and in urban areas. As many as 700,000 Americans may be affected by Crohn's disease, according to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America. The types of Crohn's disease. There are several types of Crohn's disease depending on what part of the GI tract is involved.
In conclusion, this preliminary study suggests that MSOT-based assessment of hemoglobin levels in the intestinal wall has the potential to be used to distinguish active disease from remission in patients with Crohn's disease without the need for more invasive procedures.